Welcome to the Gwinnett County Public Library's program on how to make a memory quilt. I'm Sunny. This quilt I made for a kid going off to live in a college dorm. But there are lots of reasons why you might want to make a memory quilt.
You might be missing someone in quarantine or who's passed away. Maybe you're just looking for a practical way to reuse outgrown clothes or commemorative t-shirts from your bygone days. As far as design, you do want to have one and to keep it simple. Think about where your quilt will be used. Will it hang on a narrow wall? For curling up with a book, 6 feet by 6 feet might be appropriate. If you want it to cover a bed, will it be a twin, a full, queen, or king? For this tutorial, I'm going to make a lap-sized quilt to wear in winter when riding in my friend's car that can't afford heat. I'm not a pro, but since I know one, I will have a few pro tips to share along the way. Pro tip: do not be a fair-weathered friend. Here's what we're going to need. A sewing machine, between 9 and 100 rectangles of the same size that can come from t-shirt fronts and backs, tote bags, clothes, towels, lots of room for creativity here. A rectangular piece of glass to cut them out. I'm using an 8-inch by 10-inch piece from a picture frame. A Sharpie or a wax marker. If you have dark materials, you'll need a light-colored marker. A piece of fleece or a towel, the size of your finished product. Make it something thick. It's fine to patch smaller pieces together. This is not going to show. Some neutral colored thread. If you don't have anything neutral, might I suggest you embrace the term crazy quilt? Pro tip: animal prints are neutral. We're also going to need a yardstick and some strips of material that are at least 4 inches tall. If your quilt is more than a few feet wide or tall, you might want to add some kind of anchor to attach the quilt part to the filler piece. Buttons are cute, but not so comfortable. You could use ribbons or socks or whatever you want. And if this video is your main source of information, you'll also be needing the eraser of all good sewing projects, the ripper. Once you know about what size quilt you want, divide that by the size glass you have to figure how many rectangles you'll need. Lap blankets are about 3 feet by 3 feet. I have an 8-inch by 10-inch piece of glass. I will need 9 rectangles per side. You could also archive materials as your kid grows and let the quilt be however many rectangles you've collected when they stop. To make your rectangles, put the source material on a hard surface and center your glass over the section you want to keep. About 1/4 inch of what's under the glass will be eaten up by the seams. Some designs may work better as landscape and some as portrait orientation. Just try to keep the portraits together and the landscapes together, and the ups with the ups and the downs with the downs. Maybe portraits topside and landscapes on the bottom. I'm going to bring the Mythbusters with me just in case. We're not going to get to London or even New York in my friend's car, but we might be able to make the Duluth and Gwinnett. If you want to use the back or bottom of a t-shirt as a blank, pin both layers together and cut them out at the same time. Putting blanks between images can make it look less busy. Once you have a few rectangles, start sewing them together with the image sides facing each other. Match up the corners of the rectangles and pin them. Pro tip: this little doodad is a threader and a thread cutter. I'm going to use this zigzag stitch called G on this machine. It uses a lot of thread, but it means we can stray a little farther from the edge of the rectangles. If your bottom layer sneaks off on you, just rip that seam out and start it over. Maybe pin more carefully this time. Pro tip: if things come out a bit janky, just call your project artisanal. Once you get your columns done, sew them to each other. And there's one side. Do the same thing again for the back. I'm calling it the back because this is my boring side. Put the back panel, since it's going to have a hand-stitched border, out on your filling. Measure a 2-inch border, or 3 if your project is more than a few feet wide or tall, and cut the fleece. Pin the back panel to the fleece and sew them together. Now we're going to make trim. I'm going to patch this together too to carry on with the upcycling theme. Try not to have a trim seam next to a rectangle seam. It's like laying flooring. I'm going to use these flames, but sparingly. I don't want to start a car fire, but just a few might help keep me warm. Sew trim around the rectangles that make up the front side, then sew the trim corners together to make a sort of tray for the back piece. Flip the tray over so you can't see the designs. Align the back piece over the front piece and fold the edges of the trim and pin them to the back piece. Put on an old movie and hand stitch the tray to the back, stuffing the filling borders inside the trim. Pro tip: I'm told this is called a whip stitch. We're pretty much finished, but pro tip: when it looks done, add one more accessory. I could add a ribbon or give Jamie a little button nose, but that might not be very cozy. I'm going to give Adam this fun knitted cap. I don't want him having flashbacks to the hypothermia episode. I hope you like how your quilt turns out. Check out other GCPL video programs on our YouTube channel. We also have online courses, DVDs, and books on almost anything from quilting to road trips to auto repair. Even audiobooks for a long car ride.